Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Ira, and joining me on this journey that my passion project to just continue to increase awareness and decrease stigma around food addiction, sugar addiction, whatever label people want to put on it. And recovery, the recovery journeys that folks are on, and just being willing to recover out loud. So thank you again so much for being here. Would you be willing to introduce yourself for us and maybe give us your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really nice to meet you. And my name is Ira Kennedy, and I'm up here in Canada, and I'm just outside of Toronto, and I'm just in my early 50s and feel like I've finally got a handle on what was quotes wrong with me for the last 50 years. Um, when I was little in my family, I went for sugar right away. Sugar was the be all and end all. And in a German household, Easter, Christmas, um, Thanksgiving, those holidays meant chocolate. Those holidays to me were all about sugar. And anything I could do to get it was like from birth. And I guess it must have given me some sort of peaceful feelings or security or something. I had a great upbringing, beautiful education, lots of friends, but sugar was my sole purpose. I remember living between two variety stores, and I would choose my play date based on which store we could go to that day. Like these memories, it's intense. I have letters from when one of us, my sister, I would go to Germany, and it literally started with, "How are you? Please write down every single thing you've eaten." And I was like 8. It's bizarre when I look back. When we went to the National Fairgrounds or the exhibition, my sister would get the candy apple. Well, I would rather die than eat the apple. I just wanted the red swirl. Like I didn't need the apple. I wanted sugar. I wanted candy floss. And for some reason, that never changed. So when I was in public school, there was a young guy who was a little rebel, and he would leave the property at recess to go to the store. And he'd come back, his teeth were rotted, and his mouth was blue with candy. And I would be so jealous. And I would be like, "Oh, I can't believe he had the balls to leave this school." But I was obedient. I never would. But that was all that was on my mind. I couldn't believe he got access to sugar and candy during the day. When I'd come home, um, have one cookie, have a banana, have half a banana. I'm like, what is half a banana? When I was 10, this concept of have one something before dinner, I just, even then I was like, I don't understand what you're saying. I didn't verbalize that. I just remember being completely put off by this trying to subdue my desire to get sugar. I once, in the corner of the kitchen, put my hand on an element that had gone from red to black to hoist myself up on the counter to get the cookies. And my entire hand was third-degree burned, and I was screaming down the hall. And it was all because I had to get sugar. I had to get the cookies that were too high for me to reach, and I would do anything. So then I was a teenager, and then I went off to university, and I realized that Wendy's was on the way home, and I had a car and money. And so I ate Wendy's every single time I would come home, and that was my reward for studying really hard. And ironically, I have a degree in physiology. So that was 30 years ago, but we learned we are carb burners and this and that. There was nothing about fat burning or low carb, or certainly nothing about food addiction, as we know. And then growing up, also, I'll say in the 70s and 80s, my mother cooked 3 meals a day. She was a stay at home mom. We only ate well. So today, when I look at the food that's available and the ease of which we want to just simplify our lives with fast food, I think the kids today are getting an even worse start than I did. And even then, I was completely screwed with really good foundation. So that scares me and frustrates me and makes me angry when, if I try to watch actual television, and every commercial, if you watch sports, a baseball game, every commercial goes between food and a diabetes medication, food and a diabetes medication. And this is totally okay somehow. Yet we sort of conquered smoking, and we big tobacco, and we sort of conquered alcohol. And in Canada, advertising to alcohol in certain degrees, it's not accepted. And but this food thing, and you can go into a grocery store, the larger grocery chains, 90% of what's in there is literally poison. And I feel I'm a very intelligent person. I'm extremely successful in business. I have a great marriage. Everything that I want in my life is the way I want it, except for what I put in my mouth. And I'm going to get emotional because it's very frustrating. I feel like there's no additional knowledge, but I still can do it. So between low carb and keto and the fasting method, and now, this acceptance of Dr. Vera Tarman and yourself and Clarissa, and food addiction being put out there, I feel those three things for me together are the solution. I have been sugar-free for 2 months. I've not, and it's like amazing. So I feel good. I feel free. I'm not stressing. I don't have the shame, the guilt, the self-hate. It's only been 7, 8 weeks and my knees are still really sore and I'm definitely still overweight, but at least I can go to bed knowing that I'm no worse than I was yesterday. I'm knowing that, I don't care if it takes 2 years. I'm 51. I don't care about the white pants anymore. It's about knowing that my fatty liver will not be a fatty liver, and that maybe one day, I can be slim and waltz through a room the way I think I look and not where I am. I'm also blessed with being married to probably one of the fittest people I know. I actually own bicycle stores. I sell recreational bicycles for a living and have for 34 years. Yet I'm still the fat bike shop owner. And my husband is fit. And if it doesn't do good for his body, he has no interest in eating it. So it's not like I'm trying to avoid the secret stash. I'm not like, if anyone is going to make me succeed, it's him. And yet I still couldn't. I still had the car and money. So, and then there's these periods where I might leave, I would work all day. So my reward was sugar, my relief, my solution. It wasn't working out, or it was just sugar. And there was a time when I left work, I stopped at a gas station. I did what I did. I went into the house. And then the next morning I went back to my car in the garage. I opened the driver's seat and I saw a white bag on the passenger seat. And I thought, what is that? And I reached over to look for it. And I opened it and I literally dropped it like it was a hot potato. And it was 2 chocolate bars uneaten and about 3 that were already eaten. So all of a sudden I remembered doing that. But the person I was in the morning, it was like a total blackout. And I literally did not know why that bag was in the car until I opened it. And I was like, oh my God. And then I thought, last night when I left work, there was nothing that could have stopped me from buying those 5 chocolate bars. I live 1.5 miles from my house. So I literally could only stomach down 3 of them before I walked in, like, hi, honey, I'm home. And so that is just basically a daily summary of my existence. I smile, I put on a brave face, I take a shower, I stuff myself into my, fitness pants, and I pretend that I'm not, 80 pounds overweight. And I have had the knowledge. I've had a roller coaster of information. Now that I'm 51, I've yo-yoed 7, 8 times. I know I have severe insulin resistance. I know one of the first times, do you guys have Jenny Craig in the US?
We do.
So ironically, I had to go to Best Buy today to buy a new monitor. And as I drove by the plaza that I first went to Jenny Craig 30 years ago in 1990. I went into Jenny Craig. Ironically, the store right next to it in that strip mall is Baskin Robbins. So I've been to the Baskin Robbins more in 30 years than the Jenny Craig. But when I went to the Jenny Craig and I was only 20 years old, I wanted to lose 20 pounds. And I literally think I lost 20 pounds by opening the door. I couldn't believe how easy it was. And I thought, oh my God, like I can gain weight and lose it anytime I want. Now I was so naive. And of course, as the time went on, it's become more difficult to lose weight, no matter how much good food I eat. And again, I understand insulin resistance, and that's the part that I think there's knowledge. I came across a book 15, 20 years ago by Kay Shepherd. And I read the page of why you might be a food addict. And I almost fell off the chair. I'm like, this is me. And I called a friend, my best friend in the whole world. And I said, I figured it out. I'm a food addict. And she's like, oh, that's ridiculous. Like, I can't even believe you're telling me this. Like, you're way smarter than that. And, oh, don't be foolish. And she's someone I really like and trust. And I was literally felt belittled and like, oh, oops. okay, maybe that is silly. Of course it's silly. I'm a smart woman. I know what to put in my mouth. So then that was 15 years ago. And then there's Dr. Berg, a keto chiropractor. Of course, he has a million videos. I also went to Dr. Bernstein in Canada, and Dr. Bernstein also shedded the weight. You eat 800 calories, they give you vitamin B shots, and you bring in your pee for a keto test. I didn't know what the test was for, and I didn't ask, even though I'm a scientist. And it wasn't until I learned about Dr. Berg and learned about keto that I understood about reducing carbs, to reduce insulin, to switch to fat burning, and it instantly made sense. And then I got on to the diet doctor and Dr. Jason Fung and Megan and fasting and Dr. Ben Bickman, the insulin metabolic scientist. And it's because of social media that this has all intertwined itself into my brain. If it was literally just books in the library from 20 years ago, I might not have got to this point. So even the last bit with the sugar bomb in your brain and Bitten and you guys, I truly feel that it's come together. I listened to a podcast last night for Megan Ramos and Dr. Pataguana and Nadia, and it was great, but I don't hear them talking about food addiction, fasting rules, fasting. Do I put milk in it? Don't I put milk in it? So there's no real tie there. And then I listened to your introductory one and of course I didn't expect you to talk about that, but it's about the food addiction component. And I just feel like if it could all come together, maybe the pillars would be the right information about the lowered resistance. Many of the posts I see in Dr. Vera's group, they just talk about, the sugar and, I'm trying to eat well, but I'm snacking and I'm eating well, and they're still eating 8 meals. So their insulin's still up and they're still going to have hunger. So you can see I sound like I know everything, but I'm still 80 pounds overweight. Woo!
But I think it's wonderful that, you're willing to show up and share. Listen, this is knowledge that you've amassed and you've been working on this for a long time. It's just very recently, it sounds like it's all kind of started to come together. And you're right. Everybody's on a different path in their journey. And believe me, it takes everything in me sometimes to just, as my kids say, zip it, lock it, put it in my pocket, right? Because I want to give information to people, but knowledge often, as you're finding or have found, does not promote transition or right. It's this action piece, but you took action a few months ago. Can you talk to me about that? What was the catalyst for that? And what did you do? How did you get started?
Molly, let me tell you. So first, I have a lot of confidence. So gaining weight, marching through the world, I own my own business. I'm a pretty bossy person. I really could care less what people think of me. And so the weight didn't bother me outwardly as far as, I would prefer to look better, but I didn't really care. And the less I cared about myself, the less I would put anything on that looked pretty, and I would just come to work and focus. And that's gone on forever. I wonder why my husband sticks around. Apparently I'm fun, but fat, ugly. Anyways, it's fine. I'm not self-deprecating. I love myself. But what happened? So I waited 2 years to go on a trip to the Bahamas. And a couple weeks before that happened, this January, I had a couple pains in my stomach and I came from a family of indigestion, fart, and you'll feel better, that's it, it's gas. And it was pretty intense. And I kind of thought I knew what it was. And again, remember, I have a physiology degree. So I'm thinking it hurts up here. At one point I went to the hospital, it wasn't my heart. So I knew I was okay there. Then I had a couple more of these. And then I Googled at 4 a.m. where I could not get comfortable. I was sleeping on the golden retriever bed. I was trying upside down on my left side, my right side. The pain was unbearable. And it was in the upper right corner. And I Googled, how do I know if I'm having a gallbladder attack? And Google basically showed a picture of me. It said, female, fair, 50, and fat. I was like, oh my gosh, it's me. I guess I'm having a gallbladder attack. We flew to Palm Beach, Florida. We were there for half a day. My stomach, that area started to hurt. And for 18 hours, I thought I was going to die. I have a couple of family members that are emergency doctors. I wrote them. I was in Nassau at this point in the Bahamas. We went to a hospital and it was really bad. So I had a blocked bile duct and I needed surgery. So it was either do it here now or fly to take the first flight home, which in my life, I thought you had to have a stroke or a heart attack. I did not know that this little stomach ache could make me go home. So I went home. First, I had to have the bile duct cleared out. 2 days later, I had the gallbladder removed. Felt great, super happy. Had lost some weight because I couldn't eat. But then I felt so great. It was lots of rewards, pizza, Big Macs. I was rewarding myself for feeling great. And then in June, I went out to the garage and plugged in a vacuum cleaner to clean my car. And I promptly tripped on the cord. And as I fell, which was like 2 feet, I fell with this hand and I broke my wrist. And I fell with the mass and inertia of myself, can't stop a freight train. I continued obviously to fall and smash onto myself. So I also broke a rib with my own hand. And then I slammed my face into the ground. So I'm going to say that a normal, healthy person who has fallen would break their fall and come to a stop. But when you weigh an extra 80 pounds and it's just falling. So I picked myself up, went into the house, looked at my sweet husband and said, honey, I fell and I think I broke my wrist. And then everything really started to hurt. And sweet fit husband comes over and, he literally he looked sad, shook his head and said, dear, it's your organs and now your bones. And he's like, and I was like, honestly, Molly, it hit me like, where this isn't going to be a good retirement. The next 20 years aren't looking good. I'm going to be sitting in a wheelchair and my husband's going to go for a run. And so it really hit home that I don't have a lot more organs that we can just cut out. Also, there were 2 ultrasounds, one from the Bahamas and that here, clearly stated fatty liver. The liver does everything. Do I really need it full of fat to and do it because of those jelly beans that I was shoving in my mouth to get through stress at work? The whole thing pisses me off, to put it mildly. And I've had enough. So I've had enough. That was it. I've had enough.
Okay. So you get yourself repaired. I hope you took yourself to get repaired. So then you get on this journey. How did that go? Did you cut everything cold turkey? What was the trajectory of that path?
I've been blessed to have lots of experience with keto. I know already that in the times that I've felt like doing it, when I cut out sugar and I go low carb, I know that the cravings go away. And that's a positive thing. For people that don't know what it feels like to not crave food and think you have to give up the one thing in life that brings you joy, I'm here now to say that it's not joyful. It's not worth it. It's not worth stuffing that fast food in your mouth in the car for a few minutes of joy. So I knew that I could get to the point if and you look forward to healthy meals because you're hungry, naturally hungry. So that helped. I do want and recognize for my path that alternate day fasting for someone who is extremely insulin resistant and for medically, therapeutically trying to lose weight, that is the fastest clinically proven way to do it. And I find it a big challenge for myself. When I get hungry, it lasts for 8 hours. And then I'm just so happy I can have hard-boiled eggs because I can eat, that I'm letting myself do that, thinking, you know what? Give yourself a break. It's been 2 months. Maybe in 3 months, you'll be able to alternate day fast. My husband, he'll fast and I'll say, do you get hungry? What do you do? And he's like, I forget about food until it's time to eat. So he's at a point with his fasting muscle or whatever it may be that he can. So I'm not ready for that. I'm just happy now that I don't have the cravings being off the sugar. If you don't get off the drug, if you aren't abstinent, it's almost impossible. And I will tell you the way I feel today after these medical episodes and really understanding what my future looks like, I'm totally okay with not having key lime pie. I'd kill for it in the past, but 20 years ago when you said, you know what, you need to be abstinent, I was so angry. The anger that I felt that you were going to take that away from me, you being, the world, that I couldn't have any of that I couldn't have in the general grocery store, these big ones, that is particular in the US, an ice cream fridge, you can count to 7 before the cart goes past the freezer, it is everywhere. And I wanted it like most people more than anything. So I think with age and real patience of being older and understanding, for me, I'm able to recognize what I want more than just that happiness. So I wasn't ready at 30, and clearly not even at 35 or 40 or 45. I still wanted to partake. And now I really don't. Like, I just don't. And so I have less fear that I'm going to fail, because it's really a lot easier to say no. When people are ordering dessert right now, I don't even care. I'm looking at birds and like the flowers. And I'm not stressing. I think many people will relate to, if I had gone to quotes a holiday party, I spend more time wondering if people are counting or noticing how many times I'm at the food table, and how reasonable is it for me to go back for more. That is the sole thought for the whole time I'm there. So being abstinent, I know I can go places and it's not plaguing my thoughts. So that freedom is huge. And being okay with confirmed lifelong abstinence. I want health. Now I made it to 50. Woo! I'd like it to make it to 80. And I think there's only one way to do that. In fact, I'm pretty convinced of it. And that's making that path easier.
Absolutely. Right. So like stop contributing to the demise, right? Like doing everything in your power to add life back to your
Right.
your years, or years to your life, both,
Right.
versus constantly that withdrawal, right? Because it's pleasurable in those few moments, but then there's the guilt and the shame and the physical and medical consequences, for sure. And not to mention, sometimes anxiety, depression, those kinds of things occur because of
Absolutely.
those foods as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So talk to me a bit about, so over the course of the last 2 months, you've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but I'm wondering, can you kind of talk to me, like, do you have a support system? Are you working with anybody? Like, what are you doing to protect and maintain that
So,
that
okay,
path you're on? Yeah.
that's great. Now, I'm sure you've heard of Joan Eflund as well. So, of course, I know every name and I know everyone's history and what they do. And so I reached out to her and her group FAR. And one thing in her spiel that she speaks of is immersion. And so I, again, have said that the social media aspect of it really keeps me on track and is my support group. And so my immersion is not to get distracted. In the times I've yo-yoed, if I have had a fall, it's like the sugar, like that Jekyll and Hyde thing I said about the car. Something takes over, and it's almost like I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I trying to eat better? No, that doesn't make sense. I don't want to do that. And it's literally like somebody has just erased my memory of what my goal is and why. One day I'm totally on track, and the next time, like, I can go have scones at Starbucks. Like, what's the big deal? And so I feel like if you first day, you can't give in, because once the sugar takes hold, it can derail you quickly, right? It's that one shot is too much. But the immersion, so while my husband's watching sports and I'm working on my laptop, I have a laptop, I'm connected all the time. I can easily go between work and Facebook. And if I have time, I'll read, I'll add my own comments. I make it a part of my day so that when I close my eyes, it's still a focus. And it stands out that she said one of the only ways to really succeed is immersion. Get into a program, don't even go to work for a week, and immerse yourself in what you're doing. Immersion to really retrain and I feel my experience in those yo-yos is that when I'm immersed, I'm safer. When I park it, it's not good. When I think I don't need it, it's not good. And then maybe I don't go there because I've cheated. And that other part of my brain is like, you know what? You don't need those people. You need to go to McDonald's.
So your immersion then is getting into the Facebook groups and that kind of thing. You mentioned listening to Nadia and Megan on their podcast, that kind of thing. Are there podcasts? Are there people that you like their videos? Like, talk to us a bit. If somebody's listening and they want to know how you did it and they want to get started, like what have you done?
I mentioned so many names. So I'm fascinated by all these people and their contributions, including you, right? That's why I'm here. I've listened to you guys, the Food Junkies podcast, 100%. Right now, I'm not in a real space for videos for myself. I have a treadmill, like everybody has a treadmill that's been sitting there forever. And I've actually, the other thing is, please, my Apple Watch. My fitness circles are huge. They are truly motivating. You can still do this. And my husband and I are like, hey, look at this. And based on, I guess, my weight and my age and everything, it really doesn't take a whole lot for my Apple Watch to think I'm exercising. So it's not that hard to close it, but it's fantastic when it's night and it's all color. And so my Apple Watch, the podcast, and a slow walk. There's no more of this. Oh, I've owned a 36 bike spin studio for 20 years, which I no longer have, but one of our biggest studios in Toronto. And yeah, I spun over the years, but I would stop so frequently that when I'd get back on a bike, all my customers would be like, oh my God, you're a spinning. And it was this big deal. So exercise, in my mind, I will gently go to the basement and walk. And I realize now that going from 70 beats to 110, basically not a whole lot for me. So, and guess what? It's no big deal. It doesn't have to be 170. I don't have to be pouring sweat. And then when I finish just a simple walk, listening to Molly talk to me on the podcast, I'm like, wow, a half an hour has gone by and it didn't kill me. But I realized that just elevating the heart rate for, endorphins, physical, better sleep, again, it doesn't have to be about running a marathon. So I'm taking that half hour of movement seriously, but not seriously. I'm calling it a walk. And guess what? Yeah, I'm getting better. It's easier to get on. It's easier. Hey, I've realized that I need to up the speed 1-2 points to get my heart rate, and I feel good doing it. So it's all these little bits of just easing into it and not giving myself an end date. Like, by this date, I have to wear this bathing suit. Like, it's, for me now, this is it. It's just, this is it. So 100%, the people I follow, the people are there, and there's still a few leaders because it's still, unfortunately, so far few between. When you're on certain groups, 12,000, the fun, fasting method, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, you think the whole world knows, but then you open your front door and you go, nobody knows. Like, it's these people on the internet, we're still a pretty exclusive group. And so I feel blessed to be part of that and contributing with my comments and my experience. But I think today it could be easy for anyone because there's just so many resources and so many great places. The Kick Sugar Summit. Do you know actually what's ironic? This is what's ironic. There is one guy named John Dempster, okay, in the group. I don't know him. I believe he's a naturopathic doctor in Toronto. And I went to this friend's cottage last week, who was the same friend that 15 years ago told me to smarten up and grow up, that I wasn't a food addict, and that was bullshit. I went and was low carb, right? We were at a cottage and I'm not eating sugar. So, and we're all kind of little biohackers. The two of them and my husband are really, really fit and into that. But she sent me a link to the Kick Sugar Summit, which I hadn't quite really paid attention to with your group or anywhere else at this point. I also follow Ben Azadi in the Keto Camp. So all of that's connected. But she sent me an email from Dr. Dempster, and his email was specific to him. So it was his cutout and I thought it was his own little Toronto spielio. And I wasn't about to drive my 30 minutes. And so I just was like, I deleted it until I saw yours and I clicked on the September challenge. And then I went through all 28 people. And so ironically, the one person who told me to smarten up, it's not real, 20 years later has sent me an email from her doctor, Dr. Dempster, which is the Kick Sugar Summit. I think that, like, this is just this Toronto guy. And I'm like, so I write her back. I'm like, I've seen the bigger thing now. And I actually carefully follow at least 12 of these other people. So take that, friend. I don't even know what my point is. I think
it's fun to know how it comes full circle, right? Yes.
Yeah. 20 years later. I know she wants to be healthy, and here she is, and here he is. And maybe now she'll take it seriously because her fancy doctor in Toronto is on board. I don't know. All I know is that I feel vindicated, but I always knew what the problem was. I didn't know what the solution was.
Yeah. So now you're doing that. You're doing these things. You're taking care of yourself in a way that you didn't before. And I'm wondering, like, do you do anything special with the food? Like, do you weigh and measure your food, or like, do you track macros? Like, what do you do with the food? And what do you do when people are like, oh, you can just have one, or,
Right.
food posters and that kind of thing.
So again, it's all these years of history and experience and all of the yo-yos. I have gone up and down 50, 60 pounds a few times. And so I've been successful and I've failed. I've been successful and I've failed. And now the number one of those three things, the food addiction, is at the top. I know that there is instant derailment. And all those other years, I've said, you know what? I'm on this trip. It's cool. It's okay. It's not okay. It's just not okay. And I literally, it's taken me 20 years to accept, 30 years to accept it's not okay. So I'm sorry for everyone who hasn't had 30 years to think about this that I've had, but it is the truth. Almost 95% of the people in the fasting method group don't realize they're food addicts. They just think, well, if I fast, I'll be fine. And so until they figure out that the reason that they're wanting to be part of that group and that they have type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, and all the other problems is because of the food addiction, which we know is that ubiquitous. So once they figure that out, for me, the food addiction comes first. So what I do with my food is I have scales and I do measure. I just got a sense of what 100 grams of salmon look like, or, just to get an idea. But like I said, now for the last 8 weeks, I'm just so happy that I'm not stopping at the 15 places in 1 hour or 1 mile that are between my house and my work. If that is cut out and I'm eating double the beef by accident, I had like a huge steak, it doesn't matter. If it's real food today, I don't care. Today, I'm not getting on a scale to make sure I've lost a pound. I don't care. The only thing I care about right now is that I'm eating real food. If I let in a macadamia nut and then I end up going back for 3 more, I've talked to myself about it. I know that any snacking is an emotional event. That's Dr. Saivez. It's all there. I can repeat it all verbatim, but it's the food addiction first. So second, and when and if, working on that fasting muscle, working on not getting hunger at 1:30 and thinking about food till bedtime. That's annoying to me. So if 2 hard-boiled eggs and a Dr. Ben Bickman Health Code shake that is perfectly designed makes me feel better, you know what? I want to feel better. I don't want to rely on drugs to feel better. I want to rely on real food, go to the next day, and you know what? Tomorrow's a new day. So the fact that I know that I didn't have a bag of jelly beans that is now trying to make its way through my liver, something good has to be coming of that. And you know what? If it takes 3 years, or I finally do realize that, to really heal my insulin resistance, the therapeutic fasting is a must. I think I'm going to get there. It may not be today, but it's part of the program. So the food addiction is number one. You got to get rid of the sugar. And when I say sugar, I mean any carb that is motivating you because it's food. And that tends to be carbs and fat, right? French fries, chips. If it's carbs and fat and not carbs and protein, carbs meaning vegetables or leafy greens, it's not about the carbs. It's about anything refined, processed food, the salt, the fat that goes with the carbohydrate. That's all a problem. And everyone, you don't need to really have it defined. It's really straightforward. Here is an entire room full of broccoli. Go for it, Molly. You're like, you know what? I'll have a bowl. You open a bag of Frito-Lay. Most of us would be like, yeah, just leave me alone here. I'll be fine. So picture a room full of it. If you're willing to eat all of it, it's not okay. It's just not. So yes, all the happy things in life are you to cut out. But I am so happy eating real food that I will continue on the journey. So maybe the conversation changes in 3 months or 6 months. Megan, in the fasting method, they talk about, well, fasting's hard. Yeah, it's hard. But getting chemo treatments or dealing with a heart attack, that's hard too. So if today all I have to do is not eat until tomorrow and tomorrow I can eat, great. Then today is my drive to the hospital. Today is my hooked up to the IV for my chemo. But all it is me not stuffing my face. That is therapeutic fasting. That is taking that as your medicine. And if all my medicine is not eating, you know what? My hair's not going to fall out tonight. I'm not going to be throwing up all night. Maybe I should suck it up. So that I play in my mind a lot too. I'm I take the concept of fasting seriously. I know maybe there's other food addicts or you guys talk about. I don't think I've ever had an eating disorder. I truly believe it's true addiction. So, and again, I know there's slightly different thoughts on that. So for me, the fasting concept is okay. I don't take it to any extremes, but today I get hungry, and you know what? Hard boiled egg it is with Himalayan salt, and I'm just like, whoa, this tastes good. So that's my sort of inching forward.
Yeah, no, that's great. So I'm wondering too, like, so you've been on this journey, like this, like you said, it just is now. This isn't like there's no end date. This isn't like trying to get into a specific piece of clothing,
Right.
some event. This is just is now. So in the last, 2 months or so, has your husband said anything? I mean, have there been conversations? What has been his
He
reaction to this?
is over the moon. He's only wanted me to be happy. He truly is like the best. And so, as you guys know, when you are full of pain, we project. So we literally, I'm like a monster bitch to everybody when I am in the addiction. And I'm just taking out my pain and my suffering on anyone who comes too close, including him. So I'm miserable to be around. Maybe not all the time, but I definitely am. The peace I feel now, just day to day, knowing that there's no crap going in my body, I'm happier all the time. So our interactions are better as a couple. And he's happy that I'm happy. Plus, I'm not, on his case. And so he leaves little notes and says, I'm really proud of you and blah, blah, blah. Do you want to go walk our dog tonight? And you actually do. Like, I do want to walk the dog because I can. I'm not huffing and puffing and dying. And I haven't just, wolfed down, whatever. I feel a little bit better. No, it's not magic. Like my joints, when I sit too much in this chair, when I stand up, I look like I'm 95. It's not instant. There's severe inflammation. And I know that I've done a number. And that's why I'm prepared to just let it take the time. I don't expect miracles. And I know, Dr. Fung talks about insulin resistance, and it's a decades long problem. We are insulin resistant. We have high insulin for 30 years. The high glucose doesn't really show up until the tail end of that. And by then it's too late. But if we were measuring how high our insulin was when I was 29 after wolfing down a bag of jelly beans, someone would go, you know what? This is medically not good. Your insulin is really too high. But those tests are more difficult to get. They don't do it as frequently. So it's not as easy to do. But having his support, I took it for granted and now I don't. I see hope and that makes me happy. I see that we can have a joyful next 30 years together. That's the plan anyways. So he's pretty amazing. I don't have kids. That's another thing. It's not like I'm cooking and fighting with my kids or making them only eat. Unfortunately, I think all kids, we should all be working on a low carb type, like no crap. Why would we feed our kids crap? But it's just to keep them happy. So again, how could someone with no kids, no nothing, fail? Like, how could I fail? It's like, I only have to cook for myself. My husband only wants to eat healthy food. So it's the car and the money driving to arrive. Anyways, yeah, I don't know the answer, I guess, unless you just look at me and just say it's the addiction. I feel it's a bit easy, but the intricacies of addiction. But all those times, nobody wants to be fat. Nobody wants to be fat, period. Yeah. So all those years when I could have just easily used intelligence, it was irrelevant and useless.
Well, but what we do know about addiction, right, is that it is a brain disease that hijacks pathways that already exist, right? And so because it's almost like traumatic brain injury. This is how I explain it to a lot of my clients. It's a lot like traumatic brain injury, right? Once that part of the brain is damaged, right? Like if we're in a car accident, a bicycle accident, right? We can't repair it. The brain doesn't heal it. We can't fix it with medicine or surgery. We have to build new pathways, right? So our brain does have this idea or this concept of, or phenomenon, actually, it's real, called neuroplasticity, right? So our job then is to build these new pathways. And that's what you're doing by removing the substance, right? You've shut down the chemical dependency part of that pathway.
Yeah.
And by doing these new things, like you were saying, like you have this 3-part piece where you keep food addiction at the top, and the food, like you said, like you're not going to worry about, is it extra meat today? Who cares? It's not the bag of jelly beans, right? We
Right.
also know the meat isn't lighting up that pathway like a Christmas tree.
Right.
And you're immersing yourself in these support areas, as far as, you've got your husband who's like on the sidelines cheering you on. I mean, probably walking right beside you. He's not even on the sidelines. He's like, probably like,
Right.
yeah. And you've
Yeah.
got these Facebook groups, and you've got these podcasts, and you have professionals that are helping you with the fasting and whatever else that you need. And so just showing up and doing life differently today, or even for the last 2 months, you've started to create these new neural pathways. So again, it was never an intellectual problem, and it was never a willpower problem. It was, I know it's so hard to believe, but it really is like a traumatic brain injury. The pathways have been harmed by that brain disease. And so this part of us wants to believe, right, that it was all within our power to do something
Right.
different. And for a while in your 20s, maybe that's true, right? That could have been true for you, but at some point it went past the point of
Yeah.
return.
Yeah.
And now it's this other thing. And so you're showing up, and like you said, I mean, you were referring to it like your chemo, like you're showing up and doing the medication,
Yeah.
the protocols that you need to do in order to get healthy. And your path does look different. You're right. Fasting is a path for you for many reasons. And you've got professionals, like you're not just doing it on your own.
Right.
I just literally got done talking to somebody that is using professionals and psychedelic treatment on their recovery journey. Like
Right.
everybody's path is different, and nobody should show up and poo-poo it. But what we do know is, you're right, like some people with histories of eating disorder, some people even with food addiction, it's just for whatever reason, the biochemistry of it all, whatever. Even Joan Ifland is adamant against fasting for food addiction,
Right.
because it kicks in that starving, piece of the brain that is heightened for people with the sensitivity because of addiction
Sure.
disorders. But it works for you.
I have a question for you, which
Yeah.
maybe in your experience you would know the answer to this, that haunts me, or just haven't found an answer. I grew up, both my parents smoked, and obviously that's very addictive. And I grew up hating it. The kitchen would turn blue after dinner. They both quit when they were 50, so years earlier, but they smoked from like what, 18 to 50. It's a long time. Yet I never wanted to smoke, but there are many, young children who smoke that I smoke because their parents smoke. So, but it turned me off completely. My father was a 100% high functioning alcoholic. He never missed a day of work, but I don't think he ever missed a day of drinking alcohol either. And yet I have no problem with alcohol. In your group on Facebook, I see so many of the people that have given up alcohol as alcoholics and have switched to sugar. And that makes sense to me, that you're an addict. So different. I mean, I suspect if I took heroin or cocaine, that'd be a no-brainer that I'd be addicted, because you don't have a choice, I think. But like, why, with someone who's clearly has this need for dopamine or the highlight of the pathway, why do I become an alcoholic? Like, I never have been. I just don't get that. Why is it just sugar?
Well, so there's many different reasons for it, and many different outlets. So not everybody even though, so for example, I worked with all other substances of abuse, behaviors, that kind of thing, mental health, whatever, right? Like my past life. And I would work with clients who were methamphetamine users, and that was it. They would try heroin, they would try other opioids, wasn't for them, right? But based on that logic that you're saying, like addiction is addiction, which it is, it's one
Right.
disease, it would then, we would be believing that then we would just automatically, that would be our new outlet. But that
That's
just
what I
isn't
think.
true. We're different for whatever reason. And that's why there are
We
different
don't know the
phenotypes.
answer to that.
Well, there's just different phenotypes. There's no reason for it. Just like you said, like watching your parents smoke, but you never wanted to because you were turned
Right.
off to it. But also knowing, like, I worked with clients, same thing. There would be 4 or 5 siblings in a home. They're like shuffling crank from Mexico to Montana. And, we've got kids doing lines at 9 years old, and we've got other kids in their bedrooms doing their homework and never want to touch the stuff. It's not really clear why some people develop the disease, it's a primary disease, and we can be genetically predisposed, and environment can definitely pull the trigger on that, but it isn't always true. And it just has to do with brain structure. A lot of times it has to do with adverse childhood experiences. It has to do with so many factors. But my dad, functioning alcoholic as well, but alcohol is not a thing for me. I can put it down just as easily. I think I have
Right.
2 or 3 episodes where I will drink a half a drink or a whole drink 3 times a year, 2 times a year, like
Right.
never to intoxication, whatever. But you give me a loaf of bread
Yeah.
and we're off to the races, right?
So, but I really feel like I understand the people that say they were an alcoholic and now realize they were sucked into sugar, because that
Yes.
technically makes sense to me. Like
Yeah.
you want the high. So, but the fact that we know we can get the high from alcohol and I really don't really understand that. It
Well,
pisses me off.
but
I want to
but
know.
with alcohol though, you have to remember that there's 2 components. The addictive piece of alcohol, right? The primary addiction with alcohol is the ethanol. The sugar is secondary because of how it breaks down.
Okay.
So once we remove the ethanol from somebody's life, there's still that sugar craving.
Okay.
There's still the
Okay.
sugar beast.
Okay.
And that's a lot of times why you'll see it. But a lot of people, there's a high rate of when people have bariatric surgery and they can no longer have the quantity and the types of foods
Yeah.
that they were eating, they switch
Yeah.
to alcohol and
Huh.
and people who had never had an alcohol issue before.
Huh.
So there is a bidirectional relationship there for
Right.
sure. And we're not, I don't think that anybody is 100% certain all of it, but
Right.
we can kind of put
So
it together.
I feel like from an evolutionary standpoint, I do understand why, humans, like, why not? I saw it, like, feels like 20 years ago on 60 Minutes for severe depression. Like, these people were going to die no matter what. So they came up with this thing where they implanted a button that stimulated a nerve that made them happy. The problem was there was not a single participant that was willing to stop pushing the button when they reached a moderate level of happiness. The button was there and happiness was right there. So they pushed and pushed and pushed until they were so happy they were literally nuts, which was just as bad as the depression. It was right the polar opposite of this kind of happy medium. So the experiment failed in the sense that, yeah, we could make you happy, but no individual could stop pushing the happy button. So we're all driven, and our own homeostasis. Maybe this level of happiness keeps us alive. And yes, the motivation of, hey, sex was great. I'm having a kid, which keeps my genes alive. Let's do this again. Eating keeps me alive, and broccoli made me happy 100,000 years ago. But now it's this other stuff. And since we know that, and we let these manufacturers get away with this, that is the part that really starts to make me angry too. And the high fructose corn syrup. And yeah, maybe we were trying to feed everyone on the cheap, but now we've made so much money and we know they're all addicted. It makes me so mad. So mad.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where I tell my clients all the time, vote with your forks. We're not going to change the world overnight, but you can certainly change your home environment, and people are going to start noticing what you're doing. I mean, heck, you even said your friend 20 years ago who was poo-pooing you is now trying to give you information like, hey, this is great, right?
Unbelievable. You're
So
right.
so it's this voting with your forks and just showing up and doing it, and people are going to get curious and, hey, what are you doing? And they're going to say, that's not sustainable. Oh my goodness, right? Those
Right.
food pushers are going to show up, whatever, but you are going to show up and keep doing what works for you and what is healthy and feels right for you. And pretty soon they're going to see that you're living a happier,
Yeah.
healthier life. And then they're going to say, how did you do it? Walk me through it. And that's how we're going to change who are the world, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Well,
It's going to be a
Molly, I
grassroots
think I
move.
found the secret. I
Okay.
found the keto, the fasting, and the food addiction. And I think that's it. That's the secret.
Yeah.
So-
And that sounds like it's your combination. That sounds like it's your combination. And I love that, it's just really interesting because I have lots of clients who just cannot do keto for one reason or another. I think there's some eating disorder history, that kind of thing too, but because that's your combination, I'm like all for it for you. Amen. I'm rooting for you. I mean, I just met you and I'm like so excited for you for sure. So before I let you go, I always like to end with this question. Do you have anything or do you have any words that you would like to say to somebody, maybe just first starting this journey, or something that you wish would have been said to you?
Yes. So what is interesting is when after the fall and the cast, the end of June, There was one young woman on the fasting method group who said, hey, I just had a baby, you know, I'm 31. It was about 16 weeks ago. I'm not breastfeeding. I want to do alternate day fasting. I've been overweight. And you know, anyone, you know, does anyone want to join me? So I messaged her. She's in the UK and I'm in Toronto. So we're 6 hours apart, but we connected in a way that everything she says in her messaging to me and my messaging back, it makes sense. We're aligned, but she's 31 and I'm 51. And in that case, I'm doing it with one person. And I am like, I got her to join. She joined the sugar group because I'm like, you know what? You're fasting, but I haven't heard you admit or say anything about why you're shoving, you know, crisps in your mouth. Like there's more going on here than you realize. And I need to show you this in advance. So the one thing is everyone has the access to the knowledge, which I didn't. I wanted to, I tried, I found that book. I bought Kay Shepherd's book on a whim. Like, I'm like, maybe I'm a food addict. So I bought the book and I'm like, I am a food addict. No, you're not. Okay, I'm throwing that book out. So, but don't give up. That's number one. Never give up. You're stronger than any addiction. Unfortunately, yes, abstinence is the way. It is. If you're truly an addict, it's not going to work if you think you can moderate, because you can't. And do it now. Like, don't wait. Don't wait. It's not worth it. Those 20 years of supposed happiness that all that crap brought me, that I don't actually remember. What I remember is being overweight on every trip in the winter. You know, you leave Toronto, Montana, you want to go somewhere nice and you're just enormous. It's not fun. It's not fun. So I don't remember the highs of the Big Macs in the 20 years. I remember the shame, the guilt, the pain, all of that. And so I don't wish I could go back. I'm going forward. But this 31-year-old, in the last 2 months that we've been doing this together, she slipped a week ago and said, the only reason you haven't heard from me is because I slipped and I had all this junk, and my husband, and we bought all this, and he was like, Ben and Jerry's is your favorite, have some. And I did it. And I'm sitting here and I can't believe I did this. I feel horrible. And I'm like, and it's not going to happen one time. It's going to happen for the next 20 years. And if I can save you 20 years of hell, that's why I'm talking to you. I don't wish it for me, but I do wish it for you. So I'm gently easing her into understanding that food addiction is real. And she's actually coming on board pretty quickly, thinking it's not just fasting that's going to save me. Because guess what happened? And all those times of my yo-yo of 50, 60 pounds, I thought I'd nailed it, Molly, every time. And then I slipped into the drug, into the sugar. And every single time I failed. And because of insulin resistance, you know, we're able to gain it back in 3 weeks. And people are shocked by that. It's not shocking. It's called insulin resistance. It's just as simply that simple. My husband could eat like a room full of Big Macs for a month, and he probably actually wouldn't gain weight. He has zero insulin resistance. His body is way healthier. I've destroyed my metabolism. I understand it, and I'm okay with it because I'm going to get back there. But I'm trying to mentor. And so my words of advice for other people are abstinence is worth it. You might think it sucks. It doesn't. And you just have to take it from someone like who knows, who's experienced it. And so like AA groups, you know, when you do have a sponsor or someone that can say, hey, I've been there, I think it probably could help people. Because when I was alone and I got angry, I showed myself, I'm going to show myself this is okay. And it never was. Like that moment, I was in charge. I'm having what I want. I'm in charge of me, and look at me eating all this shit, and it's great. No, it's not. So I could look back and go, you weren't actually as tough as you thought you were. You were really letting yourself down. So tell that to someone else. So I really think she's actually listening and appreciating the 20 years of hell experience that I'm willing to share.
Oh, those are wonderful words. And I love that you're mentoring and you're paying it forward already. And I think it's a really great, message for anybody listening. It doesn't matter if this is day 1, day 1,001, day 1,000,001. I don't care. Wherever you are on your journey is where you are on your journey. And if you have support and hope and resilience and whatever to share with somebody else who's coming up along behind you, let them walk beside you and go
Totally.
together, just go together.
Totally.
Yeah.
I have no regrets, and I feel like I have a chance because I'm 51. I like to believe I'm going to live at least till 80. So that gives me hope and, the brightness of the future. Of course, we don't know what's coming, but the broken bones, mostly because I fell on top of myself, and I kept falling on top of myself, and it was all bad. I can change that. And so
Yeah.
I do have some pretty good reasons why the addiction is shelved.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm done with being.
yes.
Thanks, Molly.
Amen. Thank
Molly.
you. Thank you.
Share this with the world. I want the world to know that I'm pretty pissed off at food manufacturers and how they take advantage of it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Well, I will be
Anyways.
sure to share it everywhere I can. So I just appreciate you, your willingness, your courage, your vulnerability. This has been a great conversation. So thank you so much for signing up for this crazy
Awesome.
project.
I was really looking forward to it. I love that you guys are doing this. You guys are, and you truly are heroes to me.
Oh,
So I put you in my ears and I start walking and I'm like, come Molly, come Molly. And this is from another country.
yeah.
not even
Well,
a
Clarissa's
fan.
in Ontario.
Oh, is she? Okay.
She
That's
says
right. She's in the north.
she like when we were in Europe, she took me in as an honorary Canadian just in case anybody was mad at America.
Yes, that's a good idea. We've also got Dr. Fung and Dr. Tarman. I think we've got it figured out up here.
Yeah, you do. You do. There are a lot of Canadians that have
and Dr.
yes.
Dempster, who I have to look into. Yes, it's all good. It's all good. You guys are doing great. And you know the response. And there's not one person in the fasting method that I'm not mentioning because I truly believe they need to know why they're there.
Yeah. Agreed.
They need to know.
Yeah. Well, if you can get us on the podcast.
Yes. Yeah. All
right. Stay in touch.
Okay. Thanks so much, Molly.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Bye.